What if I told you that everyday storytelling, just your ability to explain what you did yesterday or who you used to be or how you survived a terrible weekend, actually relies on this completely hidden mechanical code designed entirely to freeze time?
I mean, well, it sounds like science fiction when you frame it that way.
Yeah.
But linguistically speaking, that is exactly what we are doing every single time we open our mouths to talk about the past.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are dissecting some foundational source material specifically, a framework designed for absolute beginners to the English language.
Right, an A1 to A2 lesson plan.
Exactly. We're looking at how the past simple tense operates. And I want to be clear for you listening, we aren't here to just memorize grammar rules like we're all back in middle school.
No, definitely not.
What this material actually offers is, well, it's like a masterclass in the architecture of time. It revealed the exact mathematical mechanics we use to take a human action, put it in a box, nail the lid shut, and declare to the universe, this is finished.
That concept of finality is, it's the absolute bedrock of this linguistic structure.
Right.
If we look at the core mechanics established in these beginner frameworks, the past simple tense is reserved exclusively for actions that have a hard start and a hard stop in the past.
So they are completely severed from the present moment.
Exactly. There's no bleed over. It's not happening right now. And to make that temporal break super obvious, we anchor these actions with incredibly specific time markers.
Like dropping a pin on a map.
Yeah, exactly. We throw down phrases like yesterday or last night, 2 days ago, or, in 2020.
Because those markers act as a tether.
Right. If you say, she started her new job 2 weeks ago, that time phrase 2 weeks ago is the pin on the timeline. It locks the action so it just can't float into the present.
But the really fascinating architectural question here is, how do we physically alter the action words themselves to prove they belong to that frozen timeline?
Because we obviously can't just use the present day words.
No, exactly. If we are freezing time, the verbs need to look different. And this brings us to the rule followers of the English language, the absolute workhorses, the regular verbs.
Right. The vast majority of English verbs fall into this category. And the mechanism for pushing them into the past is, well, it's famously straightforward.
You just attach the letters ed.
Yeah, to the end of the base word. So work transforms into worked. Watch shifts to watched. Play becomes played.
Okay, let's unpack this mechanism because I really want to look at this through a specific lens. Think of that ed suffix as like a highly visible standard issue company uniform.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, so when an English verb goes to work in the past tense, it is strictly required to put on this ed uniform. And the beauty of this is just the pure efficiency of it.
Because the moment anyone looks at the word or hears it, there is zero ambiguity.
Exactly. Everyone knows exactly where and when that verb belongs.
The uniform analogy is incredibly apt, actually, because of how strictly standardized it is. Once that ed uniform is on, it fits absolutely every single subject in the sentence.
There's no tailoring required at all.
None, which is, wonderfully democratic. I, you, he, she, we. It honestly doesn't matter who is performing the action.
This has to be a major point of relief for anyone analyzing English compared to, say, Romance language.
Oh, absolutely. Where the verb endings changed depending on the speaker, yeah. In the English past simple, you never have to add an S for he, she, or it.
Right.
It is fundamentally incorrect to say she works yesterday, or to try and mix the two systems and say she works yesterday.
You just drape the uniform over the base word and walk away. I worked, you worked, he worked, we worked, they worked.
Right.
But knowing English, putting on a uniform is rarely as simple as just slapping an E and a D on the end of every single word without some friction, right?
Yeah, the spelling has to adapt to the physical shape of the word.
Because written language is deeply visual.
It is, and orthography, the spelling system, hates visual awkwardness.
It really does.
For most verbs, yes, you just attach the ed, wash is washed. But think about a verb that already ends in the letter E. Words like, love, live, or dance.
If you blindly added an ed to love, you'd end up with L-O-V-E-D.
Right.
It would look absurd.
It would look like a typo. So the mechanical adjustment is simply to drop one of the E's. You just add the D, it saves space and preserves the visual flow of the word.
But then you have verbs ending in a Y, like study, carry, or try. And this feels like a place where the visual flow completely breaks down if you aren't careful.
Oh, it is a massive orthographic pitfall. If you leave the Y and just add "ed," it triggers a sort of visual whiplash for a native reader.
A Y followed directly by an E and a D just looks fundamentally wrong on the page.
It does. So the architecture of the language demands a structural change. You basically have to swap that Y out for an I before you put the uniform on.
So study drops the Y, gains an I, and then takes the aid. It's a purely aesthetic adaptation to make the uniform fit better on the page.
Exactly.
And we see a similar structural reinforcement with really short verbs, too.
Yeah, short, punchy verbs that end in a single consonant. Words like stop, shop, or plan.
Because if I just add aid to stop, visually, it looks like stopped.
Which implies a completely different pronunciation.
Right.
To preserve that hard, short vowel sound in the middle of stop, English requires you to double the final consonant. You add a second P before the aid.
Oh, so that double consonant acts like a phonetic wall.
Exactly. It protects the short vowel sound.
So shop gets a double P, becoming shopped. Plan gets a double N. It's fascinating how these aren't arbitrary rules meant to torture learners. They're actually engineering solutions to keep the language readable and pronounceable.
They are structural supports, but, they still fundamentally rely on that aid uniform.
Right, which totally begs the question what happens to the verbs that absolutely refuse to wear the uniform.
Mm.
The ones that reject the ed entirely. Because this is where the language pivots from the rule followers to the absolute rebels.
The irregulars.
Yes.
These are verbs that completely bypass the standardized system. They don't take an ed under any circumstances.
Well, what do?
Instead, they mutate into entirely different words when they step into the past. And there is no overarching engineering solution here. They just have to be absorbed and memorized one by one.
The shift is jarring. You look at a fundamental action like go, and in the past tense, it mutates into went.
Right.
Ate flips into ate. See becomes saw.
Come is came. Buy transforms into bought, which, visually doesn't even share the same structural DNA as its present tense form.
Drink becomes drank. Sleep is slept. Meet is met. Leave is left. Find is found.
Yeah, the list goes on.
If I'm looking at this purely as a system of communication, I have to push back here. It feels like complete chaos. Why would a language develop a perfectly good democratic aid uniform only to have a massive chunk of its vocabulary just totally ignore it?
Well, it looks like chaos until you view it through the lens of evolutionary linguistics.
Okay, I'm listening.
If you analyze that list of irregular rebels eating, sleeping, drinking, waking, going, buying, seeing, what do you actually notice about those specific actions?
They're the absolute baseline requirements of human existence. It's what you do every single day.
Exactly. They are high-frequency actions. 1,000 years ago, before English was standardized in dictionaries or printing presses, human beings were talking about eating, drinking, sleeping, and going places every single day.
So they use those specific words thousands of times more often than a word like, say, investigate or organize.
Precisely. And in linguistics, frequency breeds resistance.
Wow.
Because those ancient peasant farmers were using those quirky, mutated past tense forms so relentlessly in their daily survival, the words hardened like concrete.
That makes so much sense.
By the time the English language tried to standardize everything with the ed uniform, these high-frequency words were so deeply embedded in the cultural muscle memory that they simply refused to change.
That is incredible. So it's not random at all. The irregular verbs are basically linguistic fossils.
That is exactly what they are.
They survived standardization because we simply couldn't stop using them long enough for the new rule to take hold.
Notice that when we invent a brand new verb today, like to Google or to fax or to text, it always takes the regular ed uniform.
Oh, right. We Google it. We texted them.
It's only the ancient foundational human actions that retain their rebel status.
And you see this fossil record instantly when you try to recount your day. If you say, I went to the supermarket, I bought pasta, I ate dinner, and I slept, you are relying entirely on ancient linguistic rebels just to explain a basic Tuesday.
You really can't escape them.
Okay, so we've established how to confirm that an action took place. We deploy the ed uniform, or we rely on an irregular fossil. But what happens when we need to express the void?
The void.
Yeah, how do we mathematically explain that an action didn't happen, or inquire if it did?
Okay. This requires a structural shift. English is an analytical language, which means instead of constantly changing the main verb to show every possible nuance of meaning, we bring in helper words, auxiliary words.
Right.
For the past simple, To make a negative or ask a question, we recruit the word did.
Okay, so the structure for a negative becomes subject, followed by did not or didn't, followed by the base form of the main verb.
Exactly.
And here's where I want to introduce another analogy, because this mechanical shift can be deeply counterintuitive for learners. I like to look at the word did or didn't as a time-traveling bouncer.
A bouncer. Okay, walk me through the logic there.
Think about the ecosystem of a nightclub. The bouncer stands at the door, checks your ID, and establishes your credentials.
Right.
Once you are past the bouncer, everyone inside the club implicitly knows you belong there. You don't have to keep showing your ID to the bartender or the DJ.
I see where you're going.
In a sentence, the moment did or didn't enters the picture, it acts as that bouncer. It does all the heavy lifting of signaling to the listener, hey, this entire sentence is taking place in the past.
So the auxiliary verb absorbs the temporal responsibility.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because didn't has already checked the ID and established the past tense, the main action verb gets to relax. It doesn't need to put on its ed uniform.
Right.
It doesn't need to mutate into an irregular fossil. It gets to just hang out in its casual base form.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize a rule that trips up almost everyone trying to deconstruct English.
Because the redundancy is strictly prohibited.
Yes.
Yeah.
You say, I didn't work yesterday. You use the base form, work. You would never say, I didn't work.
Because the bouncer's already there.
No.
Worked is wearing a uniform it doesn't need.
The exact same applies to our ancient irregulars. You say, she didn't go to school. You absolutely never say, she didn't went to school.
Right. Went is trying to do a job that didn't has already accomplished.
Yeah.
And looking at the question structure here, it seems like the bouncer just jumps to the front of the line to achieve the same effect.
It does. To ask a question, the structure simply inverts. Did plus the subject plus the base form of the verb. Did you work yesterday? Or, did Anna buy the dress?
Again, we use buy. We don't use bought. You don't ask, did you watch the film with an ed?
Because the did at the start of the sentence establishes the timeline immediately.
And this structural framework is highly expandable, isn't it?
Oh, very much so. If you need more specific information, you just place your classic white question words, what, where, when, why, who, how, directly in front of the bouncer.
So, where did she go? Or when did they arrive?
Exactly.
The did sits right there in the middle, holding the past tense structure together, allowing go and arrive to stay completely base level. It is an incredibly reliable, predictable engineering system.
Well, it is reliable right up until you encounter the one foundational verb that completely rejects this entire auxiliary system.
Ah, yes, the lone wolf, the verb to be.
The verb to be is a total anomaly. It is the only verb in this beginner framework that fundamentally refuses to interact with the did bouncer.
But why? Why does to be get special treatment when thousands of other verbs have to use did?
It goes back to the philosophy of the verb itself. Most verbs describe an action: jumping, eating, running.
Right.
The verb to be doesn't describe an action, it describes a state of existence.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it is the linguistic equivalent of dark matter. It's so foundational, so primitive, that it operates on its own ancient independent logic.
And its mutation in the past tense reflects that. Unlike regular verbs that just take an ed, or irregulars that have one past form, the verb to be splits into two entirely different words depending on who is existing.
It transforms into was for singular subjects, I, he, she, it. I was tired. She was at home.
Okay.
But if the subject is plural, or the second person you, it mutates into were. You were late. They were at school.
So it's already breaking the democratic rule where one form fits all subjects.
Right.
But the real friction happens when we try to make it negative. If it rejects the did bouncer, how do we say someone wasn't something?
It handles the negation internally. You attach the not directly to the existence verb itself, creating wasn't or weren't.
So I wasn't tired. They weren't at home.
Exactly. You never, under any circumstances, use did with was or were.
Because you can't say, I didn't be tired. That just sounds like a machine glitching.
And for questions, because there is no bouncer to jump to the front of the line, the verb itself just trades places with the subject. You ask, was she at home, or were you busy?
It's so jarring when you hear someone try to force the bouncer onto the lone wolf, asking, did she was happy, or did they were tired? The linguistic architecture just violently rejects it.
It really does. It has to be, was she happy? It stands entirely alone.
It truly is the lone wolf of the timeline.
Now, I want to pivot back to our rule followers for a moment. Those thousands of verbs wearing the standard ed uniform.
Okay, let's do it.
Because while they look beautifully standardized on paper when you actually speak them out loud, they hide a fairly complex phonetic secret.
This is where the physical mechanics of speech come into play, and it is endlessly fascinating.
Yeah.
We established the ed uniform, but why do words like watched and played sound entirely different at the end? I mean, they share the exact same two letters, but linguistically, they're doing something totally different in the mouth.
To understand why, we have to look at the biology of pronunciation. The ed ending actually produces three distinct phonetic sounds depending on the biological finish of the base word.
Wait, three sounds.
Three. The first is a hard, sharp T sound. When you say watched, worked, or washed, you are ending the word with a T, despite the fact that it is spelled with a D.
Watched, worked. You're right, there is zero D sound there. It is just a sharp T.
The second sound is a softer, vibrating D sound. Words like played, cleaned, or opened.
Why the difference, though? Why a hard T for worked and a soft D for played?
It comes down to vocal cord vibration. In linguistics, we talk about voiced and voiceless consonants.
Okay.
If you put your hand on your throat and make the she sound at the end of wash, your vocal cords do not vibrate. It is just air. It's voiceless.
Let me try it. Shh. Yeah, nothing. Just air moving.
Because your vocal cords aren't vibrating, it is biologically easier to finish the word with another voiceless sound, the sharp T, washed.
Ah.
But if you say the word play, ending on that vowel sound, your vocal cords are vibrating heavily.
Play. Yeah, my throat is definitely buzzing.
Because the motor is already running, so to speak, it's physically easier to finish the word with a voiced consonant, the soft D, played.
That is incredible. The spelling rule is totally uniform on the page, but the phonetic execution is entirely dependent on the biological path of least resistance in the human throat.
Exactly.
But what is the third sound?
The third sound is the id sound. And this is the most structurally significant because it actually forces you to create an entirely new separate syllable. Yeah. This happens with words like wanted, needed, or visited.
Visited. Okay, I hear it. It's two distinct beats. Wanted.
And the reason this matters is that the absolute biggest mechanical pitfall for anyone trying to master the system is applying that extra syllable to every regular verb.
Oh, the hypercorrection, where someone says, I worked yesterday, or we played a game.
Exactly. Worked is strictly one syllable. Played is one syllable. The linguistic architecture only allows that extra syllable expansion for the ad sound, usually when the base word already ends in a T or a D.
Like want or need.
Right, because otherwise you physically couldn't hear the uniform being added. You can't say want, you have to say want it.
The biological workaround.
Yes, exactly.
So we have all these mechanical pieces on the table, the ed uniforms, the orthographic spelling adjustments, the ancient irregular fossils, the time-traveling did bouncer, the lone wolf of existence was, and the biological phonetic sounds.
It's a lot of pieces.
It is. How does all of this mathematical architecture actually weave together to tell a human story?
Well, we can observe this forensics in action by analyzing the sample narratives provided in these beginner frameworks. Let's deconstruct the structural timeline of the story titled Lena's Busy Saturday.
Let's do it. So the timeline opens. Last Saturday, Lena woke up early. The anchor last Saturday drops us right into the past, and immediately woke acts as an irregular fossil setting the scene.
The narrative then shifts. She cleaned her bedroom and washed her clothes. Here we see the regular ed verbs taking over, driving the routine actions forward.
And both maintaining that strict single-syllable pronunciation.
Exactly.
Then at 10 o'clock, she went to the supermarket. Went another heavy-hitting irregular verb, entirely bypassing the rules. She bought vegetables, bread, milk, and chicken.
Bop.
A verb that visually looks nothing like its present tense form, just doing the heavy lifting.
Notice the structural pivot later in the day. After lunch, she studied English for 2 hours. That's our orthographic adaptation at work.
The Y in study was fundamentally altered to an I before the uniform was applied.
Right, to prevent visual whiplash.
And then the time-traveling bouncer enters the chat. In the evening, Lena watched a comedy film with her family. She enjoyed the film, but her brother didn't like it. The bouncer has established the timeline, so the verb like is stripped of its uniform. It just stays base level.
Finally, the timeline concludes with the lone wolf of existence. She was tired, but she was happy. No physical actions taking place, just a pure state of being, locked firmly in the past.
It is genuinely staggering how a single mundane paragraph about grocery shopping and watching a movie utilizes every single piece of this complex linguistic architecture we just dismantled.
It really is.
And we see the exact same structural interplay in the conversational dialogue provided between the characters Emma and Daniel.
Indeed, Daniel traveled by train to visit his brother in Manchester and watched a football match. Regular verbs dictating the travel log.
While Emma stayed home, cleaned her apartment, and made chicken and rice. As an aside, between Lena buying chicken and Emma making chicken and rice, whoever engineered this linguistic framework clearly has a culinary bias.
It is decidedly a universe fueled by poultry. But pay attention to how they negotiate negative space in their conversation.
Okay.
Daniel interrogates the timeline. Did you drink coffee? The bouncer did, sits right at the front. Emma replies, no, I didn't. I drank tea.
No, she uses the bouncer to confirm the negative, no, I didn't, and then immediately deploys the irregular fossil drank to establish what actually occurred.
It is a flawless execution of the mechanics.
So when we pull all the way back, what does this actually mean for us? Stripping away the terminology, these aren't just dry rules to memorize for a text.
Not at all.
These uniforms, fossils, and bouncers are the literal, practical tools we use to share the mundane details of our weekends. They are the mechanisms we use to justify our choices, to bond over shared experiences, and to, connect with another human being over a cup of tea.
They are the structural beams of human memory. You literally cannot share your history without them.
The structural beams of memory. That is the perfect distillation of what we've explored today.
Yeah.
To quickly survey the ground we've covered, we've analyzed the democratic efficiency of the IED uniform. We've unearthed the evolutionary reasons behind those stubborn, irregular fossils.
Right.
We've seen how the did bouncer absorbed the temporal weight of a sentence. We've isolated the lone wolf, was, and were. And we've uncovered the biological throat mechanics dictating the secret sounds of the past.
And if there is one practical takeaway from the architecture we've studied, it is to immediately test the framework yourself. Mentally isolate yesterday. Force yourself to construct 5 distinct timelines about what occurred.
I woke up, I went to the kitchen, I made coffee.
Prove to yourself that the system works. As we pack up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a slightly more philosophical thought, something to chew on regarding the psychology behind all this grammar.
Where are you taking this? Think deeply about how having a rigid structural mechanism to forcefully separate right now from what is finished shapes human psychology. If our species had never engineered a past tense, if we literally lacked the mathematical linguistics to definitively prove that an action is over, done, and severed from the present, how would we ever be able to construct our own identities?
No.
Or, perhaps more importantly, how would a human being ever be able to mentally let go of yesterday?
That is a staggering implication. If you can't linguistically close the box, you can never move forward.
Language shapes reality. Thank you all for joining us on this exploration of the invisible codes we speak every day. Keep questioning the structures around you, keep looking for the hidden mechanics, and always keep digging deep into the things you learn. We'll see you next time.